Think of someone in your life who seems to glow. A mentor, an artist, a leader, someone you admire so deeply that they seem to possess a light, a wisdom, a courage that feels almost superhuman. We look to them for inspiration. We see them as the goal. But what if I told you a significant part of that light is not theirs? What if it is a reflection of your own unowned brilliance? What if your admiration, in its very intensity, is the beautiful gilded cage that is keeping your own soul from learning how to fly? The great psychologist Carl Jung had a name for this. He called it the golden projection. It is one of the most subtle and most heartbreaking traps on the path of personal growth. We are taught that to admire a hero is a noble thing, to find a mentor, a guru, a guide, and to place them on a pedestal. But today, we will explore the profound, counterintuitive truth that this very act of worship is often a profound act of self-abandonment. It is the unconscious habit of giving away our own power, our own potential, our own divine spark, and calling it respect. In this deep dive into the work of Carl Jung, we will uncover the psychology of idealization. We will discover why the human psyche does this, how it keeps us playing small, and why it almost always ends in a painful disillusionment. We will learn the difference between healthy inspiration and a disempowering dependency. And most importantly, we will learn the sacred work of reclaiming your own gold, of taking your power back, not with anger or rejection, but with wisdom and with grace. So let us begin the courageous work of looking in the mirror instead of at the pedestal.
The common mistake is to believe that our shadow is only made of darkness. We spend so much time talking about the anger, the fear, the envy that we hide from the world. But there is another shadow, a shadow made of pure light. Carl Jung taught that the shadow is simply everything that is unconscious within us, and that includes your highest potentials, your unowned courage, your dormant creativity, your untapped wisdom, your hidden brilliance. This is your golden shadow. And because these qualities feel too big, too bright for our conscious ego to own, we do the same thing we do with our darkness. We push it away. We exile our own gold into the light of another, and we call it admiration. This is not a flaw in you. It is a profound, universal human dynamic. It begins with a hook. We find a person who genuinely possesses some of the qualities we admire: a gifted teacher, a courageous leader, a brilliant artist. They are the hook. And then, unconsciously, we hang our entire unlived archetypal cloak of the sage or the hero or the great artist onto them. And suddenly, they glow. They seem to radiate a numinous, larger-than-life quality. And we've all felt it, that sense of awe, of reverence, of feeling small in the presence of someone we perceive as great. That glow is the energy of your own forgotten light. It is your own forgotten light shining back at you. Let me tell you the story of Michael, a story I have seen play out in my work for over 20 years. Michael was a young writer, hungry, talented, and deeply insecure. He discovered the work of a legendary older novelist, and he fell in love. He devoured every interview. He studied every sentence structure. The older writer became his North Star, his God. And for a time, this was fuel. It gave him a standard to strive for. It pushed him to be better. But slowly, something began to shift. When he sat down to write, he no longer heard his own voice. He heard an echo of his hero's voice. His own writing felt thin, an imitation. He would read a brilliant passage from the novelist, and instead of feeling inspired, he would feel a quiet, crushing despair. A voice inside would whisper, "I will never be that good." He had placed his hero on such a high pedestal that he could no longer see a path to his own. He had fallen into the gilded cage of admiration. He was no longer learning from his mentor, he was worshiping him. And in that act of worship, he was sacrificing himself. This is the subtle poison of the golden projection. It begins as inspiration and slowly curdles into a form of self-disempowerment. As long as the gold is out there on them, we feel that we are in here without it. It creates a perpetual state of not enoughness. We become a disciple, a fan, a perpetual student, never graduating to become a colleague on the path. And here, Jung's wisdom offers us a key. He understood that the ego, our conscious self, is often terrified of its own greatness. It is a profound responsibility to own your own light. It is much safer, much easier for the ego to admire a god on a pedestal than to accept the profound, liberating truth that a spark of that same God lives within you. So it gives its power away, willingly. Pause here with me, just for a moment. Bring to mind the person you have placed on your own highest pedestal, the one you look up to the most. Can you feel that dynamic? The distance, the sense of them up there and you down here. That feeling is the cage. It is a beautiful prison built from your own reverence. This dynamic, if left unconscious, doesn't just keep you small. It sets you up for a devastating fall. Because the person on the pedestal is not a god. They are human, with their own flaws, their own hypocrisies, their own shadow. And when that humanity inevitably reveals itself, the pedestal will crack, and our beautiful admiration can turn into bitter disillusionment. We feel betrayed, when in fact we have only betrayed ourselves. But what if there is another way? What if the pedestal was never a shrine for worship? What if it was always meant to be a mirror?
And so the pedestal must become a mirror. This is the great turning point of the journey, the singular, powerful shift in perception that unlocks everything.
The person you admire is not a destination. They are a direction. The light you see in them is not their light alone. It is a lighthouse, casting a beam across the dark ocean of your own unconscious, illuminating the shore of your own golden shadow. It is your courage that you have not yet owned. It is your wisdom that you have not yet claimed. It is your creativity that is still waiting for a voice. The reason you are so drawn to them is because your soul is trying to introduce you to yourself. Let's return to our young writer, Michael, the one trapped in the gilded cage of his hero's greatness. For years, he was stuck. He wrote, but his words felt hollow. He was an echo. The breakdown came, as it so often does, not in a moment of triumph, but of quiet despair. One night, after reading a breathtaking new novel by his idol, he didn't feel the usual sting of inadequacy. He felt nothing, just a profound, empty silence. The cage had become so familiar, he no longer rattled its bars. And in that silence, a new question arose. Not, how can I be like him? But a quieter, more curious question. What exactly is it about him that I love so much? He took out a journal. He wasn't trying to write a story. He was starting an excavation. He made a list. His courage to write about uncomfortable truths. His profound empathy for his characters. His playful, almost trickster-like use of language. He looked at the list, and for the first time, he wasn't looking at a god. He was looking at a map to the buried treasures of his own soul. The work was no longer to imitate his hero. The work was to excavate himself. He stopped trying to write his hero's uncomfortable truths, and he started by writing one small, uncomfortable truth of his own. It was clumsy. It was terrifying. But for the first time in years, the voice was his. I invite you now to a sacred practice, the mirror journal. You can do this in a notebook, or right now, just in your mind's eye. Pause here with me. Let's try this together. First, bring to mind the person you admire most. See their face, feel the reverence you have for them. Second, name one specific golden quality that makes them shine in your eyes. Is it their unwavering integrity, their boundless compassion, their fierce creative spirit? Just one. Now for the final, most important step. With that quality in mind, I want you to travel back in time through the landscape of your own story. Become an archaeologist of your own story. And find one, just one small, forgotten piece of evidence that a seed of that exact same quality also lives in you. Maybe it wasn't a grand gesture. Maybe it was the time you spoke up in a meeting when it was easier to be silent. That was your integrity. Maybe it was the time you listened to a friend's heartbreak without trying to fix it. That was your compassion. Maybe it was the time you tried a new recipe just for the joy of it. That was your creative spirit. Find your one small piece of evidence and hold it. Do you feel that? That quiet click of recognition? That is the sound of a key turning in the lock of the gilded cage. That is the beginning of taking your gold back. This courageous work is at the very heart of what Carl Jung called the process of individuation. It is not about arrogance. It is not about claiming you are as good as your hero. It is about a profound act of self-compassion. It is about realizing that your admiration was never a mistake. It was your soul's best, most innocent strategy to keep your own gold safe until you were ready to claim it. And it allows you to look back at that part of you that needed a God on a pedestal, not with judgment, but with so much love. You are not a pale imitation. You are an apprentice, learning from the reflection of your own future self. But what does that look like in the real world? What happens when the disciple is ready to leave the shadow of the master and walk beside them as a colleague?
And so, what happens when you finally take your gold back? The surprising truth is, you do not become a god on a pedestal yourself. That is the ego's fantasy. The soul's victory is much quieter and far more profound. When you withdraw your projection, you do not destroy your hero. For the very first time, you get to truly meet them. You are finally able to see them clearly, not as a shimmering god, but as a gifted, flawed, and beautiful human being, just like you. And the frantic, needy energy of admiration dissolves into a quiet, solid, and unshakable respect. The hierarchy collapses, and the relationship is reborn on the sacred ground of equality. Years later, Michael, our young writer, had found his own voice. He had published a small, honest book that was entirely his own. By chance, he attended a conference where his old hero was speaking. After the talk, he approached him, but the young, star-struck disciple was gone. In his place stood a man, and they spoke. They did not talk about greatness. They talked about the work, the lonely hours, the frustration of a stubborn sentence, the quiet joy of getting it right. In that moment, they were not a god and a worshiper. They were two craftsmen, two colleagues, two souls who understood the same sacred struggle. Michael walked away from that conversation not feeling small, but feeling seen. He had not lost a hero. He had gained a brother on the path. This is the final stage of a healthy relationship with our heroes, the journey from disciple to colleague. It is the ultimate goal of the journey Carl Jung described, a journey towards a sovereign self, a self that is no longer looking outside for a source of light, because it has learned to tend to the flame within. When you have done this work, when you have reclaimed your own gold, a profound shift happens not just in your relationship with your mentors, but in your relationship with everyone. You stop unconsciously scanning every room for a savior. You stop looking for a partner, a boss, or a guru to give you the answers, or to give you permission to be yourself. The frantic search is over, and what rushes in to fill that space is a deep and abiding peace, an unconditional self-worth that is not contingent on anyone else's approval or brilliance. You finally feel at home in your own skin. Pause with me here and feel into that possibility. The freedom of no longer needing to be validated. The peace of no longer feeling less than. I invite you to ask yourself a quiet question. Who is the colleague in you, the sovereign, capable self that is waiting to be met, that is waiting for you to stop looking up at the pedestals of others and to finally turn your gaze inward? This is the ultimate freedom. It is not the freedom to be great. It is the freedom from the need to be great. It is the freedom to simply be, to be whole, to be you. You have stopped giving your power away in the form of worship. You have become a container for your own light. But this journey of reclaiming your power has two sides. There is the conscious act of withdrawing our golden projections, of no longer willingly giving our energy away. But what about when it feels like our energy is being taken without our consent? What happens when someone's neediness, their negativity, their endless drama seems to drain your life force, leaving you exhausted and depleted? Now that you have learned to stop handing your power over, how do you learn to protect it from being siphoned away?
We have walked a subtle and difficult path together today. We have stood before the pedestals we have built and felt the cold shadow they cast upon our own lives. We have learned to see the gilded cage not as a fortress of respect, but as a beautiful prison of our own making. And we have found the key, the profound, liberating truth that the person we idolize is not a god. They are a mirror, a map, a sacred messenger sent by our own soul to remind us of the gold we have forgotten. The great work of Carl Jung is not about becoming a perfect person. It is about the courageous, lifelong journey of becoming a whole one. And you cannot be whole if you have given your best parts away. Your admiration was never a mistake. It was a compass, pointing you back home. It was a placeholder for your own potential, keeping it safe until you were strong enough to carry its light yourself. So now, the work is to integrate, to move from a life of imitation to a life of creation, to stop being a reflection of someone else's light and to start being your own source. This is the ultimate act of respect you can pay to your mentors, not to be like them, but to become so fully yourself that you can one day stand beside them as a colleague, as an equal, as another unique soul offering your own hard-won wisdom to the world. This is the freedom that awaits on the other side of the golden projection. It is a quiet, solid peace. The war for worthiness is over. The frantic search for a savior is done, and you can finally rest in the simple, profound, and unshakable truth of who you are. Not better than, not less than, just you. Whole, sovereign, and free. This is more than a lesson. It's an invitation to a ceremony, a quiet, personal ritual to mark the beginning of you owning your own light, of consciously taking back your gold. If you are willing right now to consciously begin this reclamation, to honor the mentors who have guided you, and now to step fully onto your own path, I invite you to a courageous act of authorship in the comments below. Think of one golden quality you have admired in another: your mentor's wisdom, your friend's courage, an artist's creativity. And in the comments, I invite you to name that quality and follow it with these 6 powerful words: and I am ready to own it. For example, wisdom, and I am ready to own it. Let this not be for anyone else. Let this be a declaration to your own soul, a sacred promise that the days of giving your power away are over. Once you learn to stop consciously giving your power away, a new question emerges. How do you protect your energy from being unconsciously taken? In our next video, we will explore this vital skill by learning how to build a psychological shield against the draining dynamics of what are often called energy vampires. But for now, just be here, in the quiet, growing light of your own gold. The search is over. Welcome home.